Good afternoon. We're continuing the program. As you all know, we have this program that's going to talk about the, I would call it the partnership, the new partnership that we're trying to, or the consolidated partnership that we're trying to develop between the CGIAR and the African research and innovation systems or institutions. We have today, as moderator of the session, Dr. Kanayo Nwanze. You had him during the panel session, and you know that he's well informed about the system. We can't have a moderator better than him. So he's going to lead us through, and without wasting any more time, I would like to hand over the mic to Dr. Kanayo Nwanze. For those who don't know me, I'm Harold Remakoli. I'm the Director General of Africa Rice. And
welcome again, everyone, to this afternoon session on the presentation of the initial draft of the Abidjan 2 Communique Action Plan. As Harold said, I'm supposed to be your moderator, and for the sake of time, I will just go straight onto the agenda and share with you what is expected this afternoon. We'll have an opening remarks by Alun Fall. He's online, in the blue shirt, who is the chair of the FARA board, and followed by an address by Marco. A remark by Marco, and then we'll have a short presentation of the communique by myself. I'm calling. Hello? And somebody trying to take over my role. And then after that, then we will have a presentation of the initial draft of the Abidjan 2 Communique Action Plan by Yemi Akimbamijo, who is the Executive Director of FARA. We'll have a feedback and input session. We were hoping to get Kwesi at Accra to join us, but unfortunately his flight was cancelled, and have the opening remarks by the chair of FARA, FARA board, Dr. Alun Fall.
Dr. Kanayo, thank you very much for giving me the floor. And I wish I was there, to meet up with you guys, it's to be seasonally pregnant, that, I'm still waiting for the user that can ask. But see me after, the internet now can be good from home, I wish I was there with you. Thank you very much for being once again before. Ladies and gentlemen, the talk of word of soul. I don't know, all this, but as a talk of the word. Welcome to another moment of Africa's agricultural research for development day. It would be enough for me to say this up front that in the course of the last 18 months, many twists and turns, deals and heights have been navigated. However, today, we have come to a comfortable confluence of ideas and opinions on what would be the most expedient modality of taking Africa's agricultural research and development fraternity in many nations higher. Many lessons have been learned in the course of the cultivations that it ensued. But here with us are the benefits. We have become stronger and wiser together in our quest to raise the bar of science, technology, and innovation that regards agriculture. This on how we could help this reform and getting the best out for Africa. What is worth doing once is worth doing well. Today, we have done very well in terms of having a critical process. Is the inclusion of all voices, in all fairness, in transparency, and equity. And above all, the proper engagement of Africans with the determination of its own destiny. Today, really, we can say that together we have hit the bullseye. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me now to make special mention of the efforts in consideration of outgoing chair of the system board, our dear friend and colleague, Dr. Marco. I must also recognize the deputy manager team under the leadership of Dr. Kwajasa. These untiring efforts in unwilling show solidarity are greatly appreciated. While all the principles we have painstakingly guided the process of Abidjan 1 and 2, we remain eternally grateful. The unflinching support of the African Union Commission is particularly remarkable, especially the commitment of Her Excellency Ambassador Basa. We are very grateful to her for all of these immeasurable commitments. In the last but not being the least, we are particularly thankful to the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Hakim El Sina, for his astute leadership. Although this process is in the best interest of our dear continent, Africa, we have ultimately arrived at the optimum scenario, although played out in different tunes today. The blended harmony, now our pride, our day. What then the talk for Africa? Today we have an action plan that is emanating from the Communique. We have all integrated together that you see your reflection in every word there. So now our common voice with Africa for her. For the recognition of commitments for us, certainly we intentional pointed out better responses, approaches that can be systematically practiced and immediately accounted towards the Africa involved. Gentlemen, we will agree with you that we have had the same stream for far too long. Now quest drafting the full institutions here. This further that's in the last 6 years. Nonetheless, there is no gainsaying the fact that we have ground ample benefits of the effort of the institution. I say this is a deep sense of appreciation of the various efforts of the CEOs on our continent. Indeed, we would not have come this far without the support in building institutional and mental capacity for science, technology, and innovation. Beyond that, enormous resources have been deployed to make sure that Africa enjoys the of the money of much. The men of the continent that do not die for it. The continent are now aligning nicely with the geopolitical orientation of the country. This is a welcome development. The fact that the reform has also brought institutional alignment, science, work matters the most. The shortened transaction time serve the team of pride. I'm convinced that the single intervention, the willingness of the leadership of the CEOs, consider that the life and issues of this form of alignment certainly give the right to as is allowed to alignment of direct projection of research results that respond directly environment. This is for you. The new way of foreign science and doing business in Africa. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we can no longer afford the very vibrant approaches of the past. The race to 2060 may be long, but 2024 and 2030 just rest away. We have no time. We must now bring all our issues out and all hands must be protected. From the wisdom of as we can say, how we try to go far, just go here. The reform must therefore yield new opportunities for partnering and reforms as a departure from the status quo. This new effort must stand. Going forward, the value of reform must necessarily be different. The Africa-based several conversations with the director of the former, the director of the Bar, it is clear in our mind that we need to pay attention to how these expressions are being framed and formulated. The responses to those questions must translate to action at the household level. It's no longer enough that research answers and result in reports to government or in the page of high impact journals or any other form of private use. The impact of our efforts will be measured as it is in the binomial at the household level, where the bottom line matters the most. We have now taken a collaboration the rights of critical dimension. The results must also now use figures to commensurate dimension. How will we proceed to all this? The action plan we are in the session will certainly tell us the how. Thank you for your kind attention. My best wishes for this week. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fall, for those opening remarks and for the, you actually have challenged us in your statement to quite a few things, and I won't try to summarize them. It now gives me a pleasure to invite Marco.
The audience, to the fact that we have you here as a chair, because few people are as well qualified as you to address a moderator of the session, chairperson of the session, as qualified to be able to speak from the depth of experience on the topic of the day, which is partnership. I want to also begin by saluting my friend and colleague Alioune Fall, co-signatory of the Abidjan Communique, along with the president of the African Development Bank, the Agriculture Commissioner of the AU, and myself on behalf of CGIAR. The Abidjan Communique is a statement of intent, and the intent is for all of us to get to work and work together a lot better. And to do that exactly along the lines of what Alioune has so eloquently outlined. The intent is intended to be converted into a plan that gives us a roadmap for actual work. And that plan, as I understand it, is in the process of being developed. I think we have an initial draft. It requires a lot of work, more work of review by all of us in the room, everybody online, and many more, so that we get it right. I want to thank Doctors Yemi Akimbamijo, the CEO of FARA, and Dr. Harold Macaulay, the CEO of Africa Rice, and the Managing Director of Regions and Partnership in CGIAR for being the two drivers, the co-authors, the co-conspirators. Would be, and that is the recommendation I've certainly given to the leadership team, the topic, the theme. We have to get better at partnership. I am not saying we're bad. Everywhere where we, CGIAR, have had impact, we have by definition gone through a process of innovation, and there is no process of innovation without partnership. So we have a record of achievement in partnership, but we need to do a lot better, and particularly so in Africa. If you look at the history of CGIAR, I think we can say, and I don't mean to be giving you a caricature, and because the differentiated analysis will always find fault in any generalization, so I'll be cautious, but I'm still going to tell you that I believe if you look at the historical trajectory of CGIAR, then in Asia and LAC, we have complemented and empowered the NARs. Whereas in Africa, where we started with a much lower average level of capacity at the national level in terms of national agricultural research systems, we have tended to substitute for them. That's no recipe for empowerment and capacity building and building up the necessary institutions that an institutional landscape across all of the dimensions of the sector that every country must have if they aspire to meaningful agricultural development. So let's think about this knowledge of now can mean a whole lot, but it should not be the same approach across all countries. Our approach should be tailored to the needs and the capabilities of the country and to the articulation of what the country and the particular NARS, National Agricultural Research System, says that it wants for its country's agriculture. So I think that as we think about how to get better, or if you wish, even better at partnerships, and how to begin to implement and a way of working that Alioune has very eloquently described, then I think what I'm saying here is probably one of the items of guidance that we should keep in mind as we define how we go forward. I think national agricultural research systems in Africa need to be strengthened in major ways to address all of the challenges that we know in terms of agriculture. There is a need for a much higher degree of food self-sufficiency or food sovereignty on the continent. And that requires much higher yields for starters, whether it be in livestock or in crops. And so the question becomes how to go about that. And I think beyond what I just said, the question is, it becomes in terms of how to go about it. The derived question is, what are the implications for how CGIAR would best work country by country, line of production by line of production with the corresponding National Agricultural Research System. And to conclude, it is in this context, marrying the offer with the demand, or probably I should have said it the other way around, articulating the demand and then honing our organization's offer. That's one CGIAR. And that is the space where our newly created function of regional directors and country coordinators that respond to the full canvas of the potential offer of CGIAR comes in. This is, in a few words, how I view the opportunity for deepened partnership with African agricultural institutions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Paco. It was very, very good. Was more than a remark. It actually stimulates further discussion that we're going to have this afternoon. I really appreciate your making the time to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much.
That takes us to the next item on the agenda, which is the presentation of the communique, which I am supposed to do. So I'm going to try and do it from here. And I'm going to try to be as brief as possible so that we have enough time to for the action plan itself, which is the main reason for our being here. So rather than go through the preamble of the communique, just to remind you that this communique came out the African Union Commission for Agriculture and Rural Development and of course FARA and the CGIAR. This communique was based on a few premises. Of course, Africa having the fastest population growth, but the lowest agricultural productivity. The work of the Africa-based CG centers is critical. And for successful development and dissemination of technologies, CGIAR reforms, current reforms, will take an institutional approach based on strong, fully empowered Africa-based centers. And the reform should plan to institutionally strengthen national partners. Africa is in a race against time on food security. And the CGIAR is the world's largest publicly funded ag-research network, continue to play a pivotal role in the delivery of science and innovation to African farmers. Now, the commitments were based on key principles, and these have been translated as a set of 7 principles and core values that were mutually agreed upon. And I want to share this with you because I think it's important that I remind you of what these commitments are. Number 1, centers are the essential building block of one CGIAR, and the reforms will build on rather than diminish their delivery capacity. 2, the roles, not thousands of farmers. Number 4, the CGIAR will institute and ensure a mechanism for effectively representing Africa's priorities and research delivery, and will review the role and participation of the Global South in its governance structure. 5, the CGIAR must create an institutional framework that supports and strengthens national and supranational ag research organizations. And 6, CGIAR will formalize engagement with Africa research and innovation institutions and other CADAP associated initiatives. And on this particular principle, there are 4 engagement modalities, and let me share them with you. A, institutional structure through formalized engagement. B, funding by advocating for increased investment in African agricultural research and innovation systems. I believe we alluded to this in the earlier session this morning. C, strategic alignment with agricultural strategies of key African ag systems, CADAP, TAT, FAO science, and FAO science strategy, etc. And D, capacity development, including strengthening human and institutional capacities. And the 7th principle is that Africa must have its own representatives accountable to its constituents. These commitments to be agreed upon by CGIAR and African research institutions. So there is a challenge here, or not a challenge, there is a requirement that this action plan must be agreed upon not only by the African stakeholders, but also with the CGIAR, because the CGIAR here is the main player in this particular issue that we're talking about. Now, that is a conclusion that I'd like to share with you. It's important that we have made some progress since Abidjan 2, because the CGIAR has implemented commitments number 1, 2, and 4. Just to help you to remember, number 1, centers are the essential building blocks of one CGIAR. And for those who have seen IFA 4, this is fully recognized. IFA 4 or IFA 4 is the integration framework agreement. 2, the roles and composition of respective one CGIAR boards will be composed as set out in their governance instruments or documents. And number 4, the CGIAR will institute and ensure a mechanism for effective representing of Africa's priorities and research delivery, and that is very clearly demonstrated. So there is some progress, actually, a very impressive progress since Abidjan 2. And so this actually is demonstrated in the IFA, as I just mentioned, and version 4, I hope by the end of this week, will be endorsed by the centers, by all the centers, and so on and so forth. So I do believe that in many ways, this communique, for those of you who have had a chance to read it, and for those who have not, I will encourage you to read it. For when I was reading this over the weekend in preparation for today, I was actually impressed to the extent of the commitments and honestly the genuineness that went into this communique by all parties concerned. I see it already as a pathway, frankly, for the CGI in Africa. It's like a roadmap, and there's a lot that we can achieve through carrying through with what we have promised to do on that communique. So with that, if you allow me, let us move directly to the next agenda item, which is the presentation of the initial draft of the Abidjan 2 Communique Action Plan by Dr. Yemi Akimbamijo. I will rather that we have that session, that presentation, and then we have it open for feedback. That's the session. The section that follows after the presentation will then be facilitated by Dr. Ali. Dr. Yemi, are you with us? So I'm going to pass this over to you. Ekabo. We can't hear you. We are not hearing you yet.
Of the earlier session today, I do hope that go through this presentation without further hitch. So this presentation is, as has been mentioned by all about how far we come with respect to the virus and post-Abidjan 2 Communique Action Plan. Let me say this up front. That this work is largely undertaken by a cohort of partners from many institutions, and these partners are represented and being acknowledged. All credits go to this partnership, whatever energy proceeds, and we'll take that as an approach because of this presentation. Wonderful people that we've been working together with the past couple of years against the action plan put them together.
Hello, Yemi. Can I just stop you a bit? Could you stop sharing your screen so that we can get the presentation on? If,
Okay.
thank you.
As Nathan has to share.
Yeah, you can. Can he go ahead? You can go ahead, but go ahead, Yemi. Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah, so I see my presentation on the screen of Nathan. Is Nathan sharing or should I
Yes, he's sharing. He's sharing his screen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Nathan. So, picking up from, I was just the acknowledgements and the preface to this book, how we run our colleague there, and the rest of the team there. So, moving on to the next slide. Right, this is the list of some 3 other wonderful colleagues that joined us in virtual mode. And I acknowledge Dr. Chrisia Takra. I also acknowledge the contribution of my board chair, Dr. Paul, and the contribution of Charles Newman, who was representing Uganda. Next slide, please. So I'll proceed to share my own thoughts on the whole process. Can you shift this like this? So yes, it's not the drum, but the sound that the drum makes. I repeat that. The reason why you dance is not because of the drum, but because of the sound that comes from the drum. In other words, we need to go much higher than where we are in terms of the contributions and the expression of the work that we have done towards the agricultural, because thus far we have gaps. And we have to try and go in gaps to ensure that we really get a lot of talent that's in front of us. So on this slide, I intend to look at how we have responded to the reform. And there are two questions that I want to put on the table. The two questions are, how long should we wait for we can see the light at the end of this long tunnel? In 1992, Africa had the first agriculture because of the focus of Yuga. But since Dr. Yuga's time, there's been generations of African scientists. For how long will we continue to labor the point? And remember speaking to some people that it was in 1954 when I was having my first degree that I first learned about agricultural transformation. And from 1984, it's like 8 years from today, we're still looking for this transformation. How long is it going to take? And I ask myself again, when I look at how things have shifted in terms of the human capacities and human dynamics, which generation will save Africa? Because I said since 1964, which generation will go for us? But then I think we will need to demonstrate stronger will in answering these two questions before deciding on commitments to our action plan. This for me gives a strong basis to really respond to reform and commitment. Next slide, please. So I feel this reform is to help us to perform. And this is a joint outcome that we are very proud that after working together, working from going through like what Tia said, there's been twists and turns, there's been dips, there's been heights, but we are very happy now that we've had 20 years of the APRM. We've had 10 years of post-government, coming back from another conference all powers of the parties in 1997. It also happened to happen in Africa. And we've had 8 years post-Malabo, but still, food imports are projected to top 100 billion by 2030. Next slide, please. So, despite that, we have had 9 years of CSA. We've had 9 years from Agenda 2063, and we've had 9 years of the Science, Technology, and Innovation Strategy in Africa. All of these, 8 or 7 initiatives that I have counted, it's a lot of efforts going on in the continent, and it alludes to the saying in the scriptures that we have turned all night, but we have got nothing. But the biennial view is really suggesting that we have severely, demands that are put on us. Okay, so the action plan for us now was to stimulate commensurate responses and was also have So there are two elements on this slide. For us to be able to get to our design, we have to deploy every force to be able to help ourselves and to be able to keep these continents together. But how do you now and we've got to now take our own destiny in our hands and by the same there's another saying in this constitution, never will never allow it to be Uganda, which means that it is for us now to decide on our own destiny and to ensure that we do the needful to make these continents secure. Action plan that we are going to put in place, that we are talking about following this, must necessarily be a propulsive and a propulsive change in the game plan. That is the one that we have. Now we come to all questions. Why this action plan? Of course, Africa can no longer resist or ambivalence in its own affairs. God on this for too long. So we must collectively become a joint architects of our own future. That's one key element that drove the science agenda for agriculture in Africa. And I'm very happy that Canada wants to examine this science agenda is still very much with us and is still doing the same championship that we had always been to about our own path. We must stop the competition of the system and are sure we do need to have a full positive scenario. And in order to do that, we definitely have to engage ourselves in different modalities. Now, this action plan has definitely added a lot of value and will continue to add value to the current initiative by galvanizing focus, accountability, accountable resources, partnership. Adam, on its own, must now become the force which Africa must run to reach the sustainable development goals. Agenda 2060. Everything in these goals. Africa can no longer access the legacy of its own affairs. Next slide. Call to action. So what is the call to action in this action plan? Very simple. It is for us to develop a plan of action that will help us to operationalize and the spirit and letter of the Abidjan operationalize the spirit and letter of the Abidjan. Once summarize our semester. So we already had commitments laid out, commitments of the African research and innovation stakeholders. The first is the first four and delivered up to that standard. Right. So the first three in this block, that's 1, 2, and 4. These are the changes that are already, as Dr. Wanzi mentioned to us, they are already in place. So this is a very good step in the right direction. Next slide, please. So the 6 principles formulated the action plan. 1, that the CG and the research and innovation institutes should align for the system. The African representation, building on existing research and innovation, infrastructure and partnership, inclusivity, political partnership, and fostering innovative approaches. actions that we need to take to put strategy in process. My last slide, not this slide, is about the factors of success. So we want to have zone-based finance, one natural resources, scale, the institutional arrangement, also take into account the roles of advanced research institutions outside the CGIAR, and the rest of them, and then introducing impact. The second is that we need to begin with a new way of thinking that we hope this action now will have to drive our initiatives to the ultimate end, ultimate beneficiary. We need to take all actions together and share governance mechanism and revisiting and reviewing the science agenda for the also choosing these continental forum for science and partnership for agricultural research as part of conference and the African agricultural research as part of conference and the African business research for the last slide. The next steps is about advocacy for partnering work. Next is online participation to provide consultation with other key stakeholders, further review of the draft action plan, then the endorsement of the action plan, then the council process happening the first quarter of next year. Ladies and gentlemen, my time is up. I thank you very much for yours. This is now open.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Yemi. But before we move on to the feedback on, so I'll just quickly go through that, Yemi, just to help the participants here so that they can actually react to this initial draft. And I insist, it's not the end of the story, it's just the initial draft. And we're expecting feedback, inputs. We wouldn't go into any questioning for now, but just feedback, inputs that would allow us to build on it. And I just want to remind you that we're going to take this further in consultations with different categories of stakeholders in the future. And as Marco said, we want, by the time we get to 2023, the first quarter, where this plan would have, before it is endorsed, we're going to be sure that we have maximum consultation and inputs from our stakeholders. So could you just go back on these action steps, please? So if we really have followed, these action steps are responding to the commitments that were made. For example, the first major commitment was scaling up mechanisms. So that's one of the commitments. And the partners were saying that we need to scale up. And scaling up does not mean 10,000 farmers. We're talking about millions of farmers. So that's very key, an action step. And we have other little actions that we're referring to here. Technology transfer, and we mentioned that. There's extension. We need accountability systems, efficient and effective financing mechanisms. And we even went on to present the institutions that are responding with our partners, the African Union Commission, through a revised MOU. We already have, the CGIAR has already signed a memorandum of understanding with the CGIAR, African Union, and we need to revise this in alignment with what we have said, all the various commitments. And also, we're also looking at responsibilities within institutional framework and guidance, oversight, monitoring, evaluation and learning and communication. So all of these will be packaged into this particular action step. A third major action step is resource mobilization for zero hunger. And here we're talking about advocacy for funding, CGIAR and national systems. Remember we said that we should support national systems, support to national systems and obviously through CGIAR and AFDB partnership and create innovative financing systems that will allow us to actually resource the activities that we have in reaching zero hunger. And again, we have institutions that we think will be responsible for these. Can I have the next slide, please? Another major action step is the strategy, as it's strategic between CGIAR and CADEP, and CADEP is the Continental African Development, Agricultural Development Program. So this is actually the strategy, agricultural strategy for Africa, in other words. And we need to have a review and how we implement this strategy, CADEP X Pillar 4, which is a platform of partners, including FARA, the National Agricultural Systems, the sub-regional organizations, and we can even include this particular mechanism that is used to scale out, and we've made mention of it in innovations at present. And here we have suggested that FARA will lead all of this. Another action step is institutional capacity, and here we've spoken about this, strengthening interventions, and this would include human resources, skills, improving extension systems, because they're all part of developing the institutional capacity building and investing even in infrastructure and maintenance and resources for research institutions and learning. And a final action step that we came up with is the partnership and delivery models. Here we're talking about high-level independent advisory panel, frameworks for monitoring and evaluation, and obviously looking at planning, communication, and partnership engagement. So we have all of these elements in there. In that meeting we had for 3 days, we came up with these major action steps, and what we want here is for you to react to these, to see whether these are adequate enough or whether we need to add on these other action steps, or how we could improve on this, so that it's not going to end here, but we'll have 20 minutes, and Ali will facilitate those sessions. So, and obviously, if you need further information as we move along
On the screen, on the actions, please, the first slide, because I think it's good to guide the discussions to start looking at the actions themselves. Okay, so I think, just maybe to give this some structure, there is, a lot of diverse, experiences within this room, a combination from CG and from outside the CG. So I think one good way to structure these comments is to see, first of all, how you view the adequacy of those actions, but also if you are able to think of a particular institution or a particular initiative or a particular activity or a particular intervention that the CGIAR is currently doing that helps deliver on some of these actions, let's use the opportunity to map it. So that let's not reinvent the wheel, but build on what we have. And I think we have Roger here at the end of the room who's helping us capture all of these thoughts and ideas, which will then go back to the working groups as they refine these, this action plan further. And again, there will be further opportunities for further consultation next year. So there is, we have, moving microphones. I think we have a couple of them. And, please, let's be in any particular order.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name's Michael Victor. I'm the head of communications and knowledge management at ILRI, at the International Livestock Research Institute. And this is it's really nice to see now having this kind of umbrella framework that's coming on. And you were asking for actions and examples of what we can do together. We've actually already designed or co-designed X4P partners to develop a knowledge management partnership and framework that needs now to be implemented. And I think there's some kind of core elements there that are really important to really kind of envision of how we can actually implement this framework, which is at a very high level. And I think one thing to include in here it's kind of mentioned, but it's implicit, is knowledge and information. Knowledge is power, and ensuring that both sides, that everything is co-designed, that knowledge is flowing freely, that it's open and accessible will be central to ensuring and unlocking that the technologies are getting out to the farmers and farmers are benefiting from this. So if we could have this kind of partnership that's already been co-designed between the CODEP X4P partners and CGIAR for knowledge management would be great. And then making sure that knowledge, information, and data are really central to this partnership and memorandum of understanding. Thank you.
Excellent contribution. I like it. It's very pointed, it's concrete, it's specific. Now, one thing we have not done, Roger, is maybe just to put in one email on the screen where further comments and follow-ups could be connected. Maybe you volunteer your own email for now. We can have it on the screen so that people could send and share documentation and possibly even make very additional specific proposals. Oscar, please.
Thank you. Oscar Ortiz, Interim DG of the International Potato Center. I would like to refer to the first principle, scaling. There's no question that scaling is the priority given the needs in Africa. However, the second aspect would be on scaling itself. Do we have the scaling mechanisms already proved, tested, to be mobilized quickly? If the answer is yes, of course, it's one direction. If the answer is no, we need to validate scaling mechanisms that can be replicated. Reaching millions of households is not an easy task, and they're not blueprints. So we need to really see what exists, what is tested, proved to be mobilized. And the other point, it's of course the role of Africa-based centers is critical for convening, coordinating this effort, but representing the one CGIAR, which involves other centers that can bring resources, expertise to respond to this big challenge. And several other centers dealing with different topics have strong portfolios of projects in Africa and lessons that could be used for the strategy as well. So as one CGIAR, we can mobilize the entire globe to attend the African needs, given the importance of the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oscar. I think, again, another very set of excellent comments. I think we need to clearly make sure that within the actions there is a mechanism for bringing the wider community of the CGIAR through the regional representatives into the African continent. On the scaling, I think it has been emphasized that the program funded by the African Development Bank, the TAT, the Technology for African Agricultural Transformation, offers an excellent model that has been tested, I think, at least over the past 12, 15 years, but by no means this is suggested as the only model for scaling, because I think given the diversity across the African continent, both in terms of environment, capacities, and needs, there is definitely scope for testing further some of the other scaling options. And last, I think I personally agree that the need for continuous improvement of existing technologies. The end is not where we are today, but I think there is need for a balanced approach between the two. Thank you for making these comments. Please.
Thank you, Ali. I'm Ian Wright, DDG for Integrated Sciences at ILRI here in Nairobi. I mean, I think it's great that we've got this far and have the signatories to the Abidjan to Communique in place. But I think that as we implement this plan, we need to think who else needs to be at the table, because if we're going to achieve the ambition that we've set from this communique, there are many other players in the landscape other than those that signed the communique. Oscar mentioned scaling. To get to scale, we will need other investors. We will critically need the private sector. Without private sector engagement, we will not achieve this vision. So as the plan is developed, I think more thought needs to be given as who are the other partners that we need to engage with in order to deliver on this plan.
Excellent comment, Ian. And I think one mistake that we do unconsciously, we speak about that, we think everybody knows how the scaling process and what are the innovations and how are we engaging all the stakeholders. Because I think in the case of TAT, if you're talking about the wheat or any of the other compacts, you start all the way from the farmer, all the way up to the minister. So the private operators are there, government institutions, extension workers, the seed companies, the agro dealers, everyone along the value chain. And I think going forward, if you want to really reach...
Who leads the Animal and Human Health Program at INRI here in Nairobi. I have 2 comments linked to that. Listening our discussions this morning and the framework we are having here, I'm thinking of 2 things. So I have the feeling that, of course, this communique is between FARA and CGIAR and more African partners. But we don't forget that CG, we are working at global level. So the first point I want to make is about South-South partnership. What is the role of CGIAR really to facilitate the South-South partnership or learning between Africa and other continents? I'm from Southeast Asia. I have been there for 7 or 8 years before moving to Nairobi. And for the CRP, livestock CRP, we set up the system to study the livestock value chain between Vietnam and Uganda, specifically on pigs. Vietnam, they are very good in rice production, but also raising pigs, for example. So what would be the learning for Uganda and some other country with emerging or developing pork consumption and demand, for example? So some of the technology to scale we are talking about is not necessarily invented by our CGIAR, but by other NAS system in Vietnam, for example. So we can also make use of that for other countries. And I think that CGIAR can show our advantage doing things in different countries, so we know partner, we know people, so we link things better together for Africa. So that's the first comment. The second comment, and this is actually, I look at our EPRI-DG this morning because we talked about financing agriculture. And I think that, for low and middle income countries, the tendency for some of the, for this investment of the country in agriculture sectors. I was sitting with him for the last 2 days, and he already talked about the interface between how scientific evidence can be used for policy and transformation and this kind of thing. And I think that is very important point, that we need to really stimulating more investment from the countries themselves to really transform the food system we are talking about in African context. That equally apply for Asian or any other country.
Thank you very much. And I can relate very much to the point on financing. In my previous life before coming to the CGIAR, I was with the African Development Bank, and we did a study of the total financial flows into the agriculture sector by all the donor community, and it was less than 2% compared to 98% investment by the African government themselves in their own economy. So I think we just need to make sure that the policymakers, the finance ministers, come together with Minister of Agriculture and understand the importance of challenging and making appropriate allocations within the context of the budget process. I think we have one speaker on this side, and then I'll come to you because you've asked for the floor. Dr. Namanga.
Thank you very much, Ali. The last speaker actually almost spoke my mind. Because I said, when Marco spoke this morning, he said CG has strengthened capacity in Asia and Latin America, but more or less substituted capacity in Africa. When Yemi was speaking, he gave a long list of how many years of this and how many years of that commitment and the next commitment and the rest. Clearly, it is the lack of the either political will and capacity of the African countries themselves to be able to finance the critical part of the investments that are needed for the national research and the development, research for development systems. If they do, then the rest of what we are doing here will be supportive of that process, and they will be able to move forward. If I use my own country as an example, I'm from Cameroon. The budget being discussed now is about $10 billion a year. The CADAP says 10% of national budgets to agriculture. Can you envisage Cameroon using $1 billion in agriculture? Not really. But we don't even come close to 100 million. So that's really the problem, in that we should find ways of engaging with the national governments to be able to encourage them to live up to the commitments
that they have made to finance their own systems. If we can succeed in that, most of the partnerships we are talking about, private sector and CGIAR, or whether scaling up, delivery, has a better chance of succeeding. So thank you for the last speaker. I forgot his name, but that was good to introduce that concept.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Namkolo Kovic. I'm ILRI's Director General's representative to Ethiopia and also Regional Director for Eastern and Southern Africa for the 1CG. I stand up to respond to one of your questions, which was, are there some things that perhaps the CGIAR has already been doing that we could leverage, and perhaps things that have emerged in recent weeks? I think one of, with respect to CADEP itself, the first one would be the Regional Strategic Knowledge Support System that was initially hosted by IFPRI and is now at Academia 2063, but still has a lot of CGIAR staff from different centers that are associated with it. It involves a lot of monitoring of the CADEP process at country level, at regional level, as well as at continental level. It offers an opportunity for the CGIAR to complement what countries are doing and bring CGIAR's comparative advantage into learning lessons from activities of CADEP towards the scaling up that we are now discussing. The second, again, within CADEP is last week at the CADEP PP, we had a consultation looking at CGIAR country conveners and their CADEP focal points at country level to look at how we can forge stronger relationships. And there again, some of the issues that came up are issues around the fact that for many countries where the CGIAR has been in place, there's a lot of evidence that has already been generated that the countries P again was the fact that the African Union Commission is now talking about revamping the seven technical networks of the CADEP process. And they identified that CGIAR could actually be helpful there. And through those technical capacity networks, then to, again, accelerate progress on some of these institutional capacities that we are talking about. Then the final one that I want to speak about, I have my colleague over there, Swanisa Moyo. There was a recent workshop, I think 2 weeks ago, on access benefit sharing of genetic resources that specifically referred to the gene banks that the CGIAR have. And this also then filtered into the CADEP PP to indicate that African countries can benefit better from the gene banks that the CGIAR is, I guess, it's more hosting on behalf of the planet, if you will. And to really have those genetic resources are required for us to be able to build on resilience from animal breeds, crop breeds, as we face this climate crisis. And the African Union specifically requested that the CGIAR find ways we can support so that they can, as we are speaking here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I like very much the point. They're all good points, but the points on the gene banks, I think within the context of capacity development, there is a very important effort needed to scale up the capacity building across all national research institutes so that they know what to ask, what capabilities are there, what services are there, and what is the full potential of what is available, not just within the Africa-based centers, but more globally across the CGIAR. So thank you for making these comments. Please.
Good afternoon. I'm Abdullah Jallo. I'm the Director of Research and Innovation at Africa Rice. Marco made an observation that the national systems in Asia have moved, and apparently Africa is, yes, a fact. And I will say it's therefore no surprise that Africa is taking this kind of proactive step to really engage the one CGIAR. And I think this is a commendable effort and step in that direction. The second point is, I am aware of the fact that a center like Africa Rice has already modeled its new strategic plan alongside that of the one CGIAR. I think these are all positive steps that Africa is really ready to collaborate and move within the framework of one CGIAR. Well, like my colleague said there, is there room for South-South collaboration? I would want to ask, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I'm resisting to intervene because I'm only moderating here. But on this very specific point, I was actually in India last week, and I was meeting with the gentleman who was speaking on the panel this morning. India produces 110 million tons of wheat. They feed 1.4 billion people, and they still export wheat to the rest of the world. So there must be something to learn from this experience. Very similarly, huge successes in many other areas, and I think I would very much emphasize the South-South collaboration. Let's find creative ways on how we can link up Africa, leverage these South-South opportunities in a much in a much better way. Please, madam.
Thank you. My name is Florence Wambugo. I'm the CEO of Africa Harvest, an international non-for-profit working on the technology delivery, focusing on impact, reaching thousands of farmers and all that across Africa, but mainly in the country. We have worked on all kinds of value chains. I'm new to this. I joined Africa Rice as in the board. That's why I'm here. And I'm really excited to hear this focus, proactive on impact, and that's really good. I was before involved in the board of IPFIGRI before they became Biodiversity. And I was also involved in a bit of change the CGIAR efforts that didn't materialize. I'm very excited to find it coming together. Thank you very much. So my comment about this, because I'm dealing with truly the last mile delivery of in-person engagement, the little I know about the Green Revolution, you know more than I do, but what I do there was engagement with the government. It is the government of India scientists, like you have in CGIAR, that time was Mexico, I believe, which center in Mexico? CIMET. Engaging with the government, governments putting policy in place, government investing in irrigation, government getting information, government investing in training. The scientists brought the science, the technology, maybe not even money. I don't know if they put money there. But the government saw and demanded. There was a government pool. The government became part of the solution. That means, like now, let me just say an example. Kenya is in a serious problem of importing rice. We're importing 85% of the rice we need in this country. So we went to the government and say, we have a solution to help you reduce your rice import bill, which is 200 billion Kenya shillings. How can we help you? They'll be so ready to listen because they're already sending money away. And I can tell that. So I'm looking at this from food import bill, engaging the government, helping the governments in the area of need, so that instead of pushing them, put 10%, you are saying you're already spending so much. How can we help you? And now you have experience from TAT. How can we help you solve your problems? And so you have a serious meeting point, and this, whether they are the ones going to the Africa Development Bank to take a loan or to IFAD or whatever, then you have a meeting point.
Thank you very much. I'm Ambassador Idro from Africa Rice. I'm not a scientist, but I enjoy scientific products. we have more money in Africa than we need. That's a fact. I know you scientists have you may not know how much we use, even in terms of perfumes and in terms of beauty products. In Uganda, we export coffee worth $800 million, but the beauty products we import is $1.8 billion. That's a fact. So where is that coming from? So we have this money. And I don't want you to be confused about it, because even if you go to the banks today, they will tell you that the governments borrow money from internal revenues or from what you call internal deposits. This is local people's money. So don't be deceived. And the narrative that we must always receive money from foreigners is such that now we are used to it. And so they think that's the only stream from where we can get money. And I think that's where the major problem is. So we need to change that narrative. We even need to change the information. Because you need to go into the banks to see where the monies are. Because if you look in terms of investments, even with the farmers, Nairobi has about Kenya has 3 million cars. How many tractors do they have? Because the cost of a tractor is the same as a car. So if we had 3 million tractors in Kenya and 2 million tractors in Uganda, would we be talking this language? But the preferred thinking is we buy cars, not tractors. And these cars are also almost the cost of a factory. And the houses you have built all over, which calls Nairobi or Kampala or Ivory Coast, Abidjan, is the same with which you can build a factory. But we prefer to invest in another form. I think that is the point. Because until we see this, we'll still want a house, you want a car, and then you pay for it in cash, then you want a tractor on credit, and you are not financing the researcher. That's exactly the problem. And until we are clear about these things, I am sorry, you scientists will remain broke, because you'll be begging for money, and for us also we'll be broke, because we shall be working inefficiently on old technologies and old knowledge. And until we all, and they will not give you, and they will keep on buying a Land Rover, what do you call it, a Land Cruiser, a Mercedes, and all this, and things which are much bigger than your laboratory equipment, but you'll remain broke because you have not communicated his benefits. So I think to me we need to realize what the communication scheme should be so that we can do it. Now, number two, we have a problem. I need help. Because we say we need more food. But according to FAO, we're already producing enough food for 10 billion people. Now, what do you need more food production for? If you already have a problem, and according to the minister in India, the problem is wastage. Who is going to eat this? India, which was very broke and had no food, is exporting wheat and rice. What are you going to export to who? It is the same to China. And you will not export to the US except specialized things because they already have enough food. So I think if this food is an African problem, the calories, let's agree that that is the issue and that's the target. But let's not go wrong into producing things that will not be needed. For instance, China needs food, yes, but higher quality meat. India needs higher quality pulses. But we are researching for Africa to export to America. I think there is a problem. We need to revisit this, but we shall talk more. There are many issues, I think, within ourselves that we need to put right. I thought I could get that correct.
Thank you very much for a very excellent set of reflections and making the case for more effective resource allocation among African countries. I think we can take these two more comments, and I think at some point in time we'll have to bring this to close. The last two comments, please.
Start with me?
Yes, please. If you would
just
identify yourself and then
yes,
proceed.
I just want to say very quickly, my name is Masen Walozie from Africa. I just want to say,
microphone.
Yeah, looking at the list, I don't see, it seems to me that we forget that there are other partners that the countries are also partnering with. Because here we're talking about partnerships. There are advanced research institutes from the North. And I think they should be part of the equation somehow. We shouldn't forget that, because they are also having partnerships with the various countries at different levels. And I think we should put that in perspective as we plan to go ahead with our partnerships with the countries.
Thank you very much. The last comment, please.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Joseph Karugia. I'm a scientist, agricultural economist at EURI, and also CGIAR country convener for Kenya. And I'm going to take the perspective of the country. And we have been talking about partnerships, and I didn't get a sense that we are seeing it from the perspective of the country. Ambassador talked about too much money in the countries. I think countries have too many partnerships, and some of them probably destroy the objectives of this partnership. Who needs to be at the table? Who doesn't need to be at the table, right? To deliver on a very clear set of objectives, of priorities, and not getting distracted. Today we have CGIAR, tomorrow a different partner and another partner coming. They spend all the time managing partnerships, not actually doing the work that they should be doing. Thank you.
Excellent point actually to close with, and I think many countries are now actually undergoing reviews of existing partnerships and organizations operating on the ground, and actually CGIAR centers themselves are now receiving very difficult questions from countries across the continent where they operate, countries demanding accountability. What did we produce? What how are we benefiting from your work? How are you using our financial contributions? And also they need to justify to their own parliaments what are the privileges and immunities that are extended to CGIAR centers across the board. We need to be very conscious about the need to become also accountable and help a country on these points. So this has been an extremely rich set of contributions and suggestions, which we will fully take on board as we refine the document further. I want to thank you again for the very rich contribution, and I hand back the microphone to Harold. Harold.
Thank you very much, Ali. It wasn't an easy task. Ali just came in and I said, well, we're missing a facilitator, so as you have the role of a regional director in Africa, you have to play that role. And everybody was saying, that's the best man. And it's quite obvious that he's done that with ease. He has the experience. And I would like to thank you very much for your contribution. We have listened to we've had very interesting comments, and which would help us improve on these various action steps. But there are two which I think we still need to work on, and I don't know why. Maybe there must be reasons for that, or people don't want to talk about it, or they think that it's already done. And I note that there was less discussions on the strategy, the strategic issues. Maybe it's done, I don't know, but we need to delve into that. And this is strategy, aligning all these different strategies that we have. It's important because that's the starting point. And then the governance issues as well. How we actually set up a framework that would look at, the way we operate as a group, because now we have very important partners that have committed themselves to this action plan, and we need to actually look at the institutional and governance mechanisms around this. It's very important. But again, as I said, thank you very much. We've had great inputs. I re-echo the thanks of Ali, and it's not the end of the road. this is just the beginning. It's the initial document, the first, and we're going to organize ourselves in the best way possible so that we can have further consultations with different categories of stakeholders. You know, the CGIAR has always been blamed for not consulting. We have a way of consulting. Maybe we're up there and we think it's happening. We're going to change the tune. So we're going to go right down to the different categories of stakeholders. For the presentation, he actually worked on this document, and we agree that it's an initial draft, and we're going to continue work on it. And I would also like to thank the chair of the board of FARA, who actually framed the discussions. We lost our moderator on the way, but he's just been appointed the new board chair of Africa, right? So he has to be in that meeting, so he had to leave us. Once more, thanks very much, and I hope that we'll continue this conversation. It's not the end, and I'll leave it at there. Thank you very much.